Imagine this, the city is quiet, too quiet. Then, out of nowhere, a group of armed men start marching towards the presidential palace. A coup? It looks like one. The clock is ticking, and everyone's waiting for the usual ending, another African leader toppled, another country in turmoil. But here's where the plot takes a wild turn. Instead of falling, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man at the center of all this, stands firm. He doesn't just survive. He fights back. And not just by arresting the plotters, but by using this failed coup as the fuel to start a revolution, one that will rock the foundations of Africa's military and political landscape. Let's take a step back. Imagine this, you live in a country rich in gold, but when terrorists attack your village, your soldiers have no bullets. Yes, and no ammo. They wait for weeks for weapons that may never come. When you finally do get something, it's from neighboring countries like Niger, but by then, the damage is done. Villages are wiped out, and all you have to show for it is empty guns and a whole lot of frustration. That was Burkina Faso's reality for too long. Now, add to this the fact that, despite its wealth in gold, the country's trusted partner, France, refused to sell them any real weapons. Oh, they'd sell things like boots, uniforms, and helmets, but when it came to actual weapons to defend the country, no. Not happening. France's reasoning. You don't need lethal weapons. Meanwhile, the terrorists attacking Burkina Faso, well, they were armed to the teeth. It's like being told, sorry, we can't sell you the food you need, but here's a nice apron. Ridiculous, right? And this wasn't just Burkina Faso's problem. Other African countries like Mali and Niger were facing the same thing, fighting terrorism with one hand tied behind their backs, and their allies were either unhelpful or outright blocking weapon sales. It was a brutal cycle of begging for help and never quite getting what you needed to protect your own people. But then came Captain Traoré. He didn't just complain or cry about it. He decided to do something about it. No more waiting for the West to decide when Burkina Faso could defend itself. Traoré made a bold move. He took a massive chunk of the country's gold revenue and put it toward building a military-industrial complex. That's right, Burkina Faso would start producing its own weapons, from rifles to drones and everything in between. And here's the kicker, this wasn't just about buying guns. It was about taking control. It was about saying, we are not waiting for permission anymore. We are not begging for scraps from the West. We'll make our own future. Traoré's decision wasn't just revolutionary, it was practical. The country started building its own weapons, and fast. Drones? Check. Guns? Check. Ammunition? Check. And the best part, they didn't need to ask anyone for permission anymore. No more waiting months for help that might never come. They were in control of their own defense. Of course, the West didn't like this one bit. France, in particular, wasn't happy to see one of its former colonies suddenly turning the tables. This is dangerous, they said. A military self-sufficient Burkina Faso. That's not something we want to see. Why? Because the real threat wasn't just Burkina Faso's weapons, it was the idea that other African countries might follow suit. And if that happened, Africa might just start standing up for itself. And that's a problem if you've been used to exploiting their resources for so long, right? But Traoré wasn't intimidated. In fact, he doubled down. Instead of shying away, he got even bolder, saying, they fear not our guns, but our forge. What he meant was simple, it wasn't the weapons that scared the West. It was the fact that Africa was finally building its own future without relying on anyone else. And the results? Well, they were nothing short of astounding. Burkina Faso went from struggling with slow responses to terrorist attacks to being able to mobilize its military in just a few hours. Instead of waiting weeks for help, they were able to act within a day. It was a game changer. But it wasn't just about fighting terrorism. This military revolution also created jobs. Thousands of young people who once faced the harsh reality of unemployment or migration now had a chance to stay home and build a better future. They were no longer just waiting for someone else to solve their problems, they were part of the solution. So, what does this mean for the rest of Africa? Well, it means that the old model of relying on foreign powers for weapons is being turned on its head. Burkina Faso is showing the world that Africa doesn't need to ask for permission to defend itself. It doesn't need to rely on anyone else to protect its sovereignty. And the best part, this isn't just Burkina Faso's victory. It's a victory for the whole continent. Traore's decision to build a military-industrial complex is a blueprint for Africa to follow. It's about creating jobs, building self-reliance, and finally taking control of the continent's own destiny. In the end, Burkina Faso's revolution wasn't just about weapons, it was about pride, independence, and proving that Africa doesn't need to wait for permission to stand up for itself. And if that scares a few foreign powers along the way, well, that's just a bonus.